Well, let's go to our discussion now. The National Bureau of Statistics says the capital importation stood at $1.06 billion in the fourth quarter of the year 2022. The NBS, in its capital importation fourth quarter report released on Wednesday, that's about a month ago, says the quarter four figure was lower than $2.18 million recorded in the fourth quarter of the year 2021, indicating a decrease of 51% compared to the preceding quarter of capital importation. That's in the fourth quarter of, and that fell by 8.53% in the third quarter of the year 2022. We're joining me live to take a look at issues around capital importation into Nigeria as a senior economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. It's good to have you join us on the program at this time. Thank you so much for always, coming up on the program and showing up to discuss these pertinent issues around Nigeria's economy. Well, let's take a dive into the capital importation. It has continued to decline for some time now. We want to ask, in your view, what's responsible for this decline?
Thank you so very much for having me. When you look at most of the states in Nigeria, what we should look at is what are the states that continue to receive capital. Of the reduced capital importation by 51% compared to what we have in 2021, 2.2 billion. What we have now is $1.06 billion capital importation to Nigeria. But what states? The states such as Lagos State alone had 56.6%. Meanwhile, the remaining 4 plus 1 plus FCT were accountable for the rest. What happened to so many other states? When you look at the way, the manner in which our economy is organized, you realize that many of these leaders at the state level are not running in the institution to receive investment. At best, most of the institution are run purely on political basis, not knowing that there is need for the economy to sustain the politics. Again, when you also look at the kind of investment because when you talk of capital importation, you can divide that into 3. You have the foreign direct investment, you have the portfolio investment, and of course, and more importantly, you have other investment. Other investment, which of course does not have to do with building of factory, institutions, and so on and so forth, took the largest chunk of 65.17%, while the portfolio investment, which is investment in shares in Nigeria, only took about 26%. The remaining of 7%, and to be charitable, say 8%, which is 7.94%, was what was invested in the real FDI, which of course is what will stay with us, what will remain with us. And so when you look at it, our economy is not attracting the kind of investment that we need for our population and for our age right now. So to answer your question correctly, I think we need to become a magnet of some sort for investment to come, which we are not seeing in most of the states. Very few states are responsible. Also, when you look at the kind of challenges we have now, from electricity to so many other things, which of course time will not permit us to mention, these are the things that are responsible for the reason why we've continued to see reduced investment in Nigeria. And unlike many other African countries, such as Rwanda, such as South Africa, and Morocco, they've continued to position themselves and form new alliance. And that could be the reason why those countries continue to see surge, in investment in their countries, while in Nigeria, investment seems to be disappearing gradually.
We've seen pretty interesting figures, from the NBS. NBS is saying only 5 states out of 36 states, was able to attract capital investment in the fourth quarter of the year 2022. But investors' confidence is very important, just like you rightly pointed out. But do you think we can get the needed confidence, considering the challenges we face as a country and the population, which is our gain?
Well, population is supposed to be again by 11:59 p.m. tonight. We would have welcomed 60,000 children the rate of those that may not survive is really very low at about 1.02%, which means those guys are coming to stay with us. And for how long? Well, the statistician, medical doctor, and God will answer the question for us. But this is what is clear. When you look at the states that are attracting investment, if you check Q3 reports, you check Q2 report, Q1 report, all of 2022 and 2021 from post-COVID, the number of states attracting investment have continued to reduce. I think apart from Kaduna and Kano states, in the northern part of the country, very few other states in the north continue to attract investment. And in the recent report, you see North is conspicuously not there. I give you an instance. You know, we had Nigeria Railway Corporation partner with an organization, which of course President Buhari commissioned, that Nigeria would now have a dry port, an inland port, you know, and that was supposed to be in Kaduna. And so it means that any imports going to the north, or for most part of the north, especially northwest and northeast, people are supposed to go to Kaduna State and clear their goods. But what have become of such investment, huge investment in partnership with the state, and most especially the private sector? I can tell you that as we speak, clearing of goods, clearing of container is not happening in that particular location. Why? Because of the challenge, just one of the many challenges, insecurity. Bandits came, removed our track, and what happened? Or vandals come, cut the tracks, the train. There is no way train carrying several containers we gain access into Kaduna from Lagos, Ibadan, you know, and all other states before it gets to Kaduna, Niger State, then getting to Kaduna. So here is it. We must understand that to attract investment, we have to fight with a two-edged sword. On one side, fighting insecurity, on the other side, providing economy that is viable and sustainable for our population. If we don't, I'm afraid, we will continue to talk about some of these issues. But government must realize that we are competing with the rest of the world. We cannot say that we are landlocked or we are an economy that the rest of the world does not need to bother about us. The truth is, the rest of the world bother. The income that is coming from the globe, and it is limited. I mean, the kind of resources available to the world is limited in supply. What should we then do is to ensure that our country remain a viable location for investors around the world, whether we are talking of other investment, but more, and the most important of the three is foreign direct investment. That is not happening because of the amount of electricity supply we have for people to come and set up factory here. Just think about it. 222 million people as of April 2023. 222 million people. That's an estimate. But let's be charitable and say 210 million people. Or to even say the worst case scenario, 200 million people. We all wear clothes. We all wear shoes. We all drive. Most of us, maybe not all of us, most of us drive, get into a car or drive our own car or join a commercial transport. From one point to another, we have food coming from left, right, center of the world. What are we producing to the rest of the world? That's the real challenge. And those things we claim we are producing, are they started or finished here? Or is the world just catering for 200 million people? The truth is that whoever cater for you is the one that will take your jobs. And if you look at the unemployment figure by the same agency that released this report, the National Bureau of Statistics, it is not just the capital importation that is nosediving. As capital importation is nosediving, we see unemployment surging. That is, when people are not coming to invest in your country because your country's money is not enough. From the US to the UAE to the UK, mention all the countries in the world, you see significant investment going to those economies. So if you don't do that, what will happen? Because your people must live, they must consume. What if you don't produce for them locally, then the rest of the world will produce for them. But where will the job be? Will it be in your country or will it be with the rest of the world? The answer is obvious. The job will be with the rest of the world. That is why 33.3% of the labor force of less than 70 million people are those that are unemployed, and it's projected to even grow to about 42% at the end of this year. A big worry that our leaders must really bother about.
A very interesting point you've raised. I want us to take a look at the report again, particularly the step-by-step, if you take a look at the sectors that actually contributed to the number that we have, even though it's declining. Let's take a look at the numbers that we have, which we can attribute this to the banking sector I want us to take that up first to help us better understand why the banking sector seems to be bringing in so much money, considering the kind of atmosphere we had last year with the cash crunch, with the change of the Naira redesign policy. How come we still have the banks, pulling in that kind of money into the capital market?
Okay, so when you look at the banking sector, investors are coming from all over the world to invest in Nigerian bank or to invest using the platform of Nigeria Exchange to to put their investment in. So the investment is not really coming as a brick and mortar or people coming to build institution or people coming to start building or assembling television or vehicle in Nigeria. No. Most of this investment have gone into banking sector could be in form of loans, could be in form of the buying of shares and so on and so forth. So that is why banking sector is that platform that gives people opportunity to have temporary investment. And I use that for the lack of right word. Portfolio investment cannot stay with you for long. In 2016, when JP Morgan delisted Nigeria, most of these investors found it very easy to take away their funds in Nigeria. Nigeria then ended in a recession. Nigeria landed in a recession, even as against the speech that was beautifully and wonderfully rendered by the then IMF boss, Christine Lagarde, that Nigeria economy is robust enough and she was sure that it was going to withstand whatever pressure. That statement did not last 1 quarter before Nigeria's economy landed in a recession. What does it mean? Yes, banking sector had among all the sector, when you look at the sectorial analysis, it has the most, received most of the investment. But my question as an economist goes beyond who got the most investment. My real concern is how sustainable is this? How many jobs will this create? By how much will this help us to grow our economy? That is, what will be the contribution of this to our GDP? And how will this create prosperity for our people? And I think this is what should bother any well-meaning Nigerian, as a matter of fact.
Taking a look at the stock market, it's been on and off, particularly what we've seen in the last weeks. So will you agree with me that companies trading on the floor will meet up with shareholders' expectations? Do they have the capacity to do that?
Well, the many countries, many and even though many are not, but I'm really very hopeful. Nigeria Stock Exchange have faced this kind of turbulent time before, and the exchange has always survived it. So I strongly believe that the exchange will survive it. We've seen what is happening currently. We saw what happened currently today, but I believe that this is going to be a short-term effect. It might not last beyond a few weeks, and the exchange will, of course, have a rebound and still be a global giant. Recall that for some years now, the exchange has been identified as one of the best platforms across the globe, not just in Nigeria. I think what seems to be the major concern of the exchange in Nigeria, it's a macro issue that the exchange as a body could not solve. And if you ask me what that is the quality of Naira, because it's only Naira that is traded and is the unit, the measure of value of what is traded on that platform. And that is why we cannot shy away from having a robust conversation on the quality of unit of currency that we use to determine the worth of our nation, which is the Naira. So those making policy must be mindful of the decision they are making. If not, it will not just affect the exchange, it will affect how much you even buy your data in the long run, and all the economy, the totality of our economy. It also affects government by paying extra amounts in subsidy, because the more you devalue, it's going to determine whether those who have put their money here wants to stay. But when they notice that the value of the currency they brought, if they are going to exchange it back, it's not going to give them the volume they've invested in the economy, then more people may really not want to come. So there are a lot of more things that are affecting people not seeing Nigeria as the center of attraction beyond power supply, beyond poor exchange rate, beyond insecurity. There are so many other things, and I think time may permit just next time to look at some of them.
It's pretty sad that we've had this downward trend in recent years on our capital importation. But if you take a look at the stability, the considerable stability we've witnessed in the foreign exchange market, what in your thought is responsible for this, and do you think can be sustained?
Well, I think that if we say stability, maybe I should agree with your word. I say relative stability, because in 2015 official exchange rate was 199. As we speak, it's over 420. Being charitable, maybe I should say 450. And parallel market, the gap is still there. And in as much as you have the gap, just a couple of days ago, we saw international airline agreeing that they will take naira to above 600 in terms of a value. And for CEOs, company owners, star employees in Nigeria, those are the real drivers of the economy. They all fly. If the exchange rate has been jacked up from 500 to over 600, what that means is that corporate costs will significantly increase without, of course, making more money, just because you want to facilitate movement of humans or movement of the drivers of the economy from one point to another. Therefore, I'm of the opinion that even though we have seen some of the stability in the exchange rate now, I think that the Central Bank of Nigeria and, of course, government of the day, we need to do something significant about unifying the exchange rate. We cannot have about 430 to 460 at official rate, depending on what is really official. Maybe you are using ING or you are using what is posted on Central Bank website, and you compare those with the parallel market rate. Over time, Central Bank have said parallel market rate does not exist. But I will want you to talk to manufacturers or members of Manufacturing Association of Nigeria and ask, how long will it take if they make requests to import equipment or raw material that is not available in Nigeria into the country for production? I can tell you, because I'm one, that it takes almost forever for that to come. That suppliers may even write you that, hey, what you have placed order with us, we have another person that wants to buy, and time is of the essence. Time is money. So because all of these are not happening, we need to have that robust conversation, or as to what exactly is the exchange rate that will be a unified exchange rate beyond having some in the parallel market and having others at the official window.
But what would you say to foreign investors who might be interested in investing here? What sectors, offer the best investment opportunities at this time?
For me, this goes beyond economics, but I would tell such foreign investors to look at the demand side. And this demand should not be to change our people. If you go to the airports today, you see a lot of opportunities in terms of investment within aviation sector is huge. And I think that those that want to come do business in Nigeria will want to give that a thought. And of course, it's also a non-noise sector, which I think is what many of us should encourage people to do. But you see, beyond advising investors, this is what I want to advise President Buhari and, of course, the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu to consider. As I talk to you, Nigerian television, maybe I should not give you, but the estimate is over 20 million televisions that are available in Nigeria alone. And I know many people are watching this program now. And for those that watch this program in future, just go and check the brand of the television that you are watching. Is it made in Nigeria? Is it even assembled in Nigeria? Countries of the world have made policy, including India, that, hey, you can produce, we don't care, but you cannot bring in a finished product, for example, television, into Nigeria. That happened in India. What does that mean? Even if we are not seeing the big brand come to Nigeria, it really doesn't matter. We are saying that government, especially states that are not attracting investment, and I hope that when our representatives go to National Economic Council, this is the kind of conversation they will be having, not conversation that will really not improve the quality of life of people. I'm not saying that's what they are saying, but I'm saying that with the new administration, how do we ensure that we guarantee sustainable jobs that will be created by private sector with the partnership of government or public sector? For instance, states say we are going to give you land and guarantee CFO at a discounted rate. That on one hand. Then those that want to make television, for the sake of example, you need to, if you want to make all your say screen abroad and all of those things, but you start with assembly. Assembly must be done in Nigeria, and we're going to have people to check that it's assembled. You know what that means? We would have been able to generate Nigerians are also learning, and before you know what that means, you start seeing Nigeria that have interest even investing in that area. And I think we should look at our economy. National Bureau of Statistics have also mentioned what our import bill looks like. What are the ones that we have competence in terms of production? Partner with the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, and we start solving this problem one after the other. We cannot continue to say we are going to use quick fixes to solve problem that is slapping us on both sides of our cheeks. What we need to do today is to identify those problems and start finding solutions to them one after the other. And I believe, for instance, this example I painted with your colleague, Mr. Tolu, I've always cited how we can solve school uniform problem for 40 million children. For God's sake, the meaning of 40 million children is 2 million jobs that we kept abroad for those who are producing them for us. We don't need checkers to learn in school. We don't need striped shirts to learn in school. If it is what they produce in Abeokuta, Adire, that we can produce effectively and make them available for our children. If it is Ashoke, if it is Abada, if it is Jalamia, that we know our country can produce, and we put that on, we ask our pupils to put them onto school, we would have sustained this economy, we would have grown this economy, we would have reduced unemployment, not just by adjusting the number of how many hours people work per week from 20 hours to 1 hour that is now being proposed by that agency, the National Bureau of Statistics, to adjust the number of hours people work. So the unemployment will crash from 33.3% to about 3%. That means we are changing the pole, the goalpost in the middle of the game. So in my opinion, I think there are ways we can solve some of our challenges. And the truth is that when investors know that you have this number, 222 million people, and there is nobody that can import television or import an item without coming to produce in Nigeria. The truth is that many will come. China tried it. Today, China became the envy of the world, the second largest economy that is giving America a run for money. Why can't we try it? Largest population among black nations, all around Africa. But what are we known for? The conversation of agriculture is important. I support people talking about agriculture, but that conversation must not just be peasant farming, must be plantation. But after planting all the things we talk about, how do we process? So we must graduate from primary, which have kept us beneath, to progressing or taking that forward to secondary, which is where the jobs lie, which is where we can build our people, which is where we can build income. Unfortunately, conversation seems to be robust around crude, which is primary crude oil, or around agriculture, primary peasant agriculture, which is also primary. But countries that have grown, and they are the largest in their continent, for instance, for a western part of Europe, Germany, you have heard severally about German machine, not German farms. Even though they are German farms, but the emphasis by the authority of that country is on German machine. America, not American farm, American technology, American equipment. Of China, the largest in the world, maybe second largest now, because recent reports show that India is overtaking China. But when you look at China, you look at India, the emphasis is fast changing from the traditional agriculture that Africa is talking about. So African leaders must find ways, must find means of taking their population from primary oriented population into secondary. So this is what I'll be telling investors. The cost of labor in Nigeria is very cheap. Very, very cheap. So with cheap labor, with land, with population, what are you looking for? Leadership. So if the leaders can combine these factors correctly, put them in the hand of private sector, make laws that makes that makes establishment relatively easy and convenient, which we call ease of doing business for private sector, and protect the citizens so that they are not enslaved in the hands of private sector, then we are going to see progress. And I hope this is what we will see going forward. This is what we have always championed for this country to have. But my hope is that we're going to start seeing this difference within our economy.
I was going to ask you to be pretty specific. I know you've highlighted a couple of things that we could be doing right. But if you would be advising the incoming government, I want you to be pretty specific as to the sectors they should focus on to see that we bring back our capital importation.
Well, I am very hopeful about the next administration, and I'm very hopeful that the administration will take a detour from the kind of policy we have now. You see, there is no growth, there is no development if there is no energy. The good news, or the good thing President Buhari administration have done, is that he has taken power off the exclusive list to concurrent list. So the incoming administration should find a way to partner with the state governments to ensure that, and also private sector, I must add, to ensure that the amount of power supply that is available for Nigerian factories especially, and homes as a way of addition, must increase from 3,500 megawatts to nothing less than 50,000 megawatts. I've heard time and again in 2007 that it will take 50 years. By 2057, Nigeria is going to have, by a minister, for God's sake, Nigeria is going to have 50,000 megawatts. By 2057, where will we all be? By 2057, how viable, how strong would we be in the economy, by that time? The truth is, the incoming government is coming on a relatively clean slate. How do we improve power supply? Because it's the foundation for many things. Then work with the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria. If you truly want to mop up unemployment, create plantation. And this is not the first time we are creating plantation. Plantation was more like competition between the then Western region, the Eastern region, and the Northern region. Let this region compete favorably. And I tell you, you really don't need to look for so many labor for you to start this. We have over 220 or 250,000 coppers all year round. What are they doing? Can we give them military protection and earmark land within different local governments? And let's start looking at one crop, one local government, and produce. This will crash food inflation. The major driver of inflation, as I talk to you today, is food inflation. How do we, bring down food inflation? When foreign investors know that you have gotten your agri sector right and you are working on your manufacturing sector, they will come. Then more importantly, when you talk about insecurity, government is spending trillion, our military are doing their best, they are doing everything to protect all of us, but the military will not solve the economic problem. What does that mean? We must fight on two sides. While we continue to empower the military and support them to end insecurity, we must also be creating a viable platform for those who might have been converted, from creating a bandit or whatever we call, whichever name we have classified them as, to give it, so that we can give them a viable economy where they could be integrated back into the system. So that's what I think I'll be telling the president-elect to do. By all means, guarantee jobs. By all means, reduce poverty, reduce hunger, reduce deprivation. By all means, promote prosperity among our people. And when you do provide some of these things, you realize that Nigeria don't want more. And now with that it will come in more rail projects, it will come in more road infrastructure. Yeah. Because if you don't put all of these together, it's going to have negative impact in our overall economy.
Senior economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje, thank you so much for joining us on Business Nigeria.
Thank you so very much for having me.